Hello, welcome to Quiz Time. I'm Jess, and today I've got 100 questions on the 1950s. So, let's go back in time. What iconic rock and roll musician gained fame in the 1950s with hits like Heartbreak Hotel? Buddy Holly, Chuck Berry, or Elvis Presley? Elvis Presley. Which nation invaded South Korea to start the Korean War in 1950? China, North Korea, or Vietnam? It was North Korea. Who was the US president during most of the 1950s? Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, or Harry S. Truman? Dwight D. Eisenhower. What well-known gadget released in 1958 caused a hula hooping craze and swiftly became a cultural phenomenon? Slinky, Barbie, or hula hoop? Hula hoop. True or false? The arrest of Martin Luther King Jr. in 1955 marked the beginning of the Montgomery bus boycott, a turning point in the civil rights movement. It's false. It was Rosa Parks. What groundbreaking work of science fiction was published in 1953 by Ray Bradbury that examined the perils of censorship? 1984, Fahrenheit 451, or Brave New World? Fahrenheit 451. In 1954, the US Supreme Court ruled Brown v. Board of Education that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. In which state did the case originate? Alabama, Kansas, or Mississippi? Mississippi. What year was the first successful polio vaccine created by Jonas Salk released to the public? 1950, 1952, or 1954? 1954. What popular sitcom featuring Lucy Ricardo's antics premiered in 1951 and became a classic of television history? The Honeymooners, I Love Lucy, or Leave It to Beaver? I Love Lucy. What NATO formation led to the establishment of the Warsaw Pact? North Atlantic Treaty, Southeast Asia Treaty, or Central Treaty Organization? North Atlantic Treaty Organization. What popular fast food chain was founded in 1954 by Ray Kroc? McDonald's, KFC, or Burger King? McDonald's. And I always thought it was Ronald McDonald. Which country hosted the first Summer Olympics in 1952? United States, Japan, or Australia? Japan. Who led the Cuban Revolution? Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, or Raúl Castro? Fidel Castro. In 1956, what international crisis occurred when Egypt nationalised the Suez Canal? Cuban Missile Crisis, Suez Crisis, or Berlin Airlift? Suez Crisis. What historic event symbolised the division between East and West Berlin? Berlin Wall construction, Cuban Missile Crisis, or Bay of Pigs invasion? Berlin Wall construction. Who wrote the novel On the Road? Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac, or William S. Burroughs? Jack Kerouac. The first successful organ transplant from one identical twin to another took place in 1954. Which organ was transplanted? The kidney. The famous speech I Have a Dream was delivered by Martin Luther King Jr. during which event in 1963? Selma to Montgomery marches, Birmingham campaign, or March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom? March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. In 1953, what groundbreaking medical treatment was first successfully performed by Dr. John Gibbon? Organ transplant, open heart surgery, or vaccination? Open heart surgery. Which well-known kids' toy was made of plastic blocks that interlocked? Lego, Play-Doh, or Barbie? That's Lego, still popular today. Who were the donor and recipient of the first successful kidney transplant between non-identical twins? Lawrence and Gregory Lawler, Mary and Richard Lawler, or James and Jennifer Lawler? Lawrence and Gregory Lawler. What historic event took place on April 12, 1961, when Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit the Earth? Apollo 2 moon landing, Sputnik 1 launch, or first human spaceflight? First human spaceflight. What is the name of the first artificial satellite launched by the Soviet Union? Sputnik 1, Explorer 1, or Vanguard 1? Sputnik 1. Who was the British Prime Minister during the Suez Crisis in 1956? Winston Churchill, Anthony Eden, or Harold Macmillan? Anthony Eden. The Treaty of Rome, signed in 1957, established which economic community aimed at fostering economic integration among its member states? EU, NAFTA, or ASEAN? European Union, the EU. Which band did John Lennon establish in 1957 and later evolve into the Beatles? The Quarrymen, the Liverpool Five, or the Dovedales? The Quarrymen. What historical event occurred on October 4th, 1957, marking the beginning of the space age? First artificial satellite launched, first successful moon landing, or first spacewalk? First artificial satellite launched, Sputnik 1. The first successful colour television broadcast took place in 1954 during the tournament of which major sporting event? Super Bowl, FIFA World Cup, or Wimbledon? It was Wimbledon. Which American author wrote the dystopian novel The Man in the High Castle? Isaac Asimov, Philip K. Dick, or Arthur C. Clarke? Philip K. Dick. The Barbie doll was created by which woman entrepreneur? Ruth Handler, Joan Gans Cooney, or Coco Chanel? Ruth Handler. What groundbreaking medical discovery by James D. Watson and Francis Crick was announced in 1953? Penicillin, structure of DNA, or polio vaccine? Structure of DNA. Who was the leader of the Soviet Union during the Cuban Missile Crisis in '62? Joseph Stalin, Nikita Khrushchev, or Leonid Brezhnev? Nikita Khrushchev. In 1956, the interstate highway system was signed into law by which US president? Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, or Lyndon B. Johnson? Dwight D. Eisenhower. What landmark US Supreme Court case in 1954 declared racial segregation in public schools unconstitutional? Plessy v. Ferguson, Brown v. Board of Education, or Roe v. Wade? Brown v. Board of Education. In 1953, Edmund Hillary and Tenning Norgay became first individuals to reach the summit of which mountain successfully? Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Everest, or Mount McKinley? Mount Everest. What iconic sports car was first introduced in 1953 by Chevrolet? Ford Mustang, Chevrolet Corvette, or Porsche 911? The Chevrolet Corvette. The Red Scare in the United States during the 1950s was characterized by fear of the spread of which political ideology? Capitalism, communism, or fascism? Communism. The Salk vaccine, developed in the 1950s, was a significant breakthrough in the prevention of what disease? Measles, smallpox, or polio? Polio. What cultural phenomenon characterized by the rejection of mainstream social and cultural norms emerged in the 1950s and influenced art, literature, and music? The Beat Generation, the Lost Generation, or the Harlem Renaissance? The Beat Generation. Which famous TV game show where contestants answer questions to win cash prizes debuted in 1956 and became a cultural sensation? The Price is Right, Wheel of Fortune, or Jeopardy? Jeopardy. In 1955, the Warsaw Pact was formed in response to the creation of which military alliance? NATO, CETO, or CENTO? NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. What popular science fiction movie directed by Fred M. Wilcox was released in 1956? Forbidden Planet, The Day the Earth Stood Still, or Invasion of the Body Snatchers? Forbidden Planet. Barbie made her first appearance in 1959. What was Barbie's full name according to her fictional biography? Barbara Anderson, Barbara Millicent Roberts, or Barbara Johnson? Barbara Millicent Roberts. What musical genre, characterized by its energetic and rebellious spirit, emerged in the 1950s? Jazz, blues, or rock and roll? Rock and roll. What major historical event led to the end of French colonial rule in Southeast Asia? Battle of Dien Bien Phu, Korean War armistice, or Suez Crisis? Battle of Dien Bien Phu. In 1958, what country became the first in the world to launch a satellite into orbit named Sputnik 1? United States, Soviet Union, or China? The Soviet Union. Which famous science fiction novel exploring themes of conformity and individuality was written by Ray Bradbury and published in 1950? Brave New World, Fahrenheit 451, or 1984? Fahrenheit 451. What famous musician known as the King of Rock and Roll had his first #1 hit with Heartbreak Hotel in 1956? Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley, or Buddy Holly? Elvis Presley. Just checking you're still with us. What revolutionary contraceptive pill was first approved for use in the United States in 1957? The IUD, the birth control pill, or the condom? The birth control pill. In 1959, which American state officially became the 50th state, completing the Union? Alaska, Hawaii, or Arizona? Hawaii. The Great Leap Forward, a social and economic campaign, was launched in the 1950s by the leader of which country? China, Soviet Union, or India? It was China. Which city in Europe was affected by the Great Smog of 1952? Rome, Madrid, or London? London. The landmark civil rights case Brown v. Board of Education dealt with the issue of segregation in which public facility? Public transportation, public schools, or restaurants? Public schools. Who wrote the novel Lord of the Flies in 1954? J.D. Salinger, William Golding, or George Orwell? William Golding. In 1952, what event marked the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom? The royal wedding, the Diamond Jubilee, or the coronation ceremony? The coronation ceremony. The missile gap was a term used in the 1950s to describe a perceived strategic advantage in missile capabilities held by which two countries? United States and China, Soviet Union and United States, or United Kingdom and France? Soviet Union and United States. What iconic American car model was introduced by General Motors in 1957? Chevrolet Bel Air, Ford Thunderbird, or Cadillac Eldorado? Cadillac Eldorado. What influential literary work was published in 1952 and written by Anne Frank? The Diary of a Young Girl, Night, or Schindler's List? The Diary of a Young Girl. Who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1954 for his work on the transistor effect? Albert Einstein, John Bardeen, Walter Brayton, and William Shockley, or Niels Bohr? John Bardeen, Walter Brayton, and William Shockley. In 1954, the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization was formed as a defense alliance against the spread of communism. Which country was not a founding member? United States, Australia, or India? India. What famous fast food restaurant was founded by Colonel Harland Sanders in the 1950s? McDonald's, KFC, or Burger King? It's KFC. Who played the role of Moses in the film The Ten Commandments in the year 1956? Charlton Heston, Kirk Douglas, or Gregory Peck? Charlton Heston. What popular children's toy consisting of a drawing board with a magnetic stylus was introduced in the 50s? Slinky, Etch-a-Sketch, or Play-Doh? Etch-a-Sketch. Who won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1950 for his efforts in founding the United Nations? Franklin D. Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, or Ralph Bunche? Ralph Bunche. In 1955, what global initiative aimed at eradicating disease, especially polio, was founded by Rotary International? Project Hope, Doctors Without Borders, or the Global Polio Eradication Initiative? The Global Polio Eradication Initiative. Who was the legendary British actress known for her roles in films like Roman Holiday and Breakfast at Tiffany's? Of course, Audrey Hepburn. The launch of the first artificial satellite, Sputnik 1, by the Soviet Union in 1957 initiated what era in human history? Industrial Revolution, Space Age, or Information Age? The Space Age. In 1953, what company introduced the first electric toothbrush to the market? Oral-B, Colgate, or Philips? Philips. What influential science fiction novel written by Isaac Asimov and published in 1950 is a collective, interconnected stories exploring the future of robotics? Brave New World, Foundation, or Fahrenheit 451? Foundation. The baby boom in the 1950s was a demographic phenomenon characterised by a significant increase in what? Birth rates, immigration rates, or marriage rates? Birth rates. What significant historical event took place on July 20th, 1954, resulting in the division of Vietnam into North and South Vietnam? Gulf of Tonkin Incident, Battle of Dien Bien Phu, or Geneva Accords? Geneva Accords. In 1955, what American scientist and inventor is credited with developing the first successful polio vaccine? Thomas Edison, Jonas Salk, or Alexander Fleming? Jonas Salk. What iconic American sports car that was popular in 1953 was named after a small naval vessel? Corvette, Mustang, or Thunderbird? Corvette. In 1958, who became the first American woman in space orbiting the Earth aboard Mercury 13? Sally Ride, Valentina Tereshkova, or Jerry Cobb? Jerry Cobb. What musical innovation is often considered the first rock and roll song to achieve mainstream success in the mid-1950s? Rock Around the Clock, Johnny B. Good, or Hound Dog? Rock Around the Clock. In 1956, Morocco gained independence from which European colonial power? France, Spain, or Italy? France. in the 1954 Geneva Conference resulted in the division of Vietnam along which parallel? 17th parallel, 38th parallel, or the equator? 17th parallel. In 1958, what American physicist won the Nobel Prize for Physics for his invention of the transistor? Robert Oppenheimer, John Bardeen, or Enrico Fermi? John Bardeen. What historic event in 1959 symbolised the Cold War division between East and West Berlin? Construction of the Berlin Wall, Cuban Missile Crisis, or Bay of Pigs invasion? Construction of the Berlin Wall. In 1950, the first credit card, known as the Diners Club card, was introduced. Who was its founder? Frank McNamara, Alfred Bloomingdale, or Ralph Schneider? Frank McNamara. The Green Revolution, which saw significant increases in agricultural productivity, began in the 1950s. Which crop played a central role in the revolution? Rice, wheat, or maize? Wheat. The 1952 novel East of Eden, written by John Steinbeck, draws inspiration from which biblical story? Noah's Ark, Cain and Abel, or Exodus? Cain and Abel. In 1955, what African country achieved independence from colonial rule, becoming the first sub-Saharan African nation to do so? Ghana, Nigeria, or Kenya? Ghana. The Mau Mau uprising in the 1950s involved a rebellion against British colonial rule in which African country? Kenya, Nigeria, or South Africa? Kenya. Who became the heir apparent to the British throne in 1952? Victoria, Caroline, or Elizabeth II? Elizabeth II. What musical genre, characterised by its roots in African American gospel and rhythm and blues, gained popularity in the 1950s and heavily influenced rock and roll? Jazz, country, or soul? Soul. The 1954 film Seven Samurai, directed by Akira Kurosawa, is a classic in what film genre? Film noir, western, or samurai cinema? Samurai cinema. The hula hoop became a popular toy craze in the 1950s. Which company introduced and popularised the hula hoop? Mattel, Hasbro, or Wham-O? That's Wham-O. In 1956, the Federal Aid Highway Act authorised the construction of the US interstate highway system. How many miles of interstate highways were initially planned under its act? 41,000 miles. The 1959 Antarctic Treaty aimed to promote scientific research and ban military activity on the continent. How many countries initially signed the treaty? 12, 26, or 50? 12. The Carry On film series, known for its British comedy, began in the 1950s. What's the title of the first film in this long-running series? Carry On Sergeant, Carry On Nurse, or Carry On Constable? Carry On Sergeant. Which well-known theme park opened in 1955 in California? Disneyland, Adventure City, or Legoland? Of course, it's Disneyland. The 1958 novel Dr. Zhivago by Boris Pasternak is set against the backdrop of which historical event? World War I, Russian Revolution, or French Revolution? Russian Revolution. The first successful open-heart surgery was performed in 1952 by John Lewis. In which city did this groundbreaking surgery take place? Boston, London, or Cleveland? Cleveland. The first successful kidney transplant was performed in 1954 by Joseph Murray. What type of transplant was it? Autograft, allograft, or xenograft? Allograft. Which country hosted the first FIFA World Cup after World War II in 1950? Brazil, Germany, or Italy? Brazil. Which iconic Disney theme park opened its doors in California in 1955? Disneyland, Magic Kingdom, or Epcot? Disneyland. Just checking you're concentrating. What American car manufacturer introduced the Chevrolet Corvette in 1953? Ford, General Motors, or Chrysler? General Motors. What event in 1953 marked the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II of the United Kingdom? The royal wedding, trooping of the colour, or coronation ceremony? Coronation ceremony. And your last one. In 1954, what US state became the first to host a regularly scheduled commercial nuclear power plant? Illinois, California, or New York? Illinois. So, how did you do on the 1950s? Drop your score in the comments below, and of course like and subscribe so you get notified each time we post a quiz. And please join us next time on Quiz Time.